Hello, and welcome to Japanese Craft Beer Reviews. Today, I'm going to not talk about a single beer, but we'll look at the overall situation for, again, not craft beer, but the major craft or the major brewers in Japan. And those are the four big brewers, Asahi, Kirin, Sapporo, and Suntory. And we're going to look at the situation that these breweries experienced in 2020, and then we'll take a look at the possibilities for the future. So first of all, we're going to do is take a look at new beers, new releases that the breweries put out in 2020. And we'll take a look at some numbers. We'll take a look at the kinds of styles they produced and the most common styles. And then we will look at sales decline situation, which is kind of a given in Japan. Sales have declined for many years. And we'll look at the tax situation and changes in the tax on beer, which has really affected beer production and sales. And we will finish with a general look at each of the four majors, Asahi, Kirin, Sapporo, and Suntory, and look at some of the things they are doing. And we will finally end up with a look at a big trend, one big trend, and then finally a few other trends that are happening in the beer market in Japan. Okay, so I'm going to do this with a PowerPoint slideshow, so you won't see me again till the end. And I will put a timeline at the bottom in the description. The information I have here is from several sources. For the numbers of beers and styles is ratebeer.com. And then for a lot of the information on sales and trends come from a variety of news articles, and I will cite those in the description. Okay, well, let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to put up the show now and share the screen with you. Okay, and let's begin. Okay, so the four brewers are Asahi, Kirin, Sapporo, and Suntory. And again, what we're going to look at is their situation, the beers they produced in 2020, and some trends for all of them. Let's begin by looking at new releases by brewery. And what we see here is at the top, Asahi and Kirin produced very few beers, very few new releases. And I should say that I'm not including all new releases. In some cases, there are some local releases that are distributed only in a certain region, for example, Hokkaido, and I'm not including all of those. And I'm also not including ones that are made and distributed only overseas outside of Japan. Okay, so Asahi, just four new beers, Kirin only three, and you can see how the number of beers is declining over time. Sapporo, more than before. Suntory, few less than before. So new releases are declining, and this is especially true for Asahi and Kirin. And again, this is from ratebeer.com. Okay. And now let's take a look at the situation over the past 4 years. In 2020, there were 37 new releases from all four breweries, but you can see how the numbers declining by 10 over the years from 2017, 18, 19. So the number of new releases is declining. Then, what did they put out? Let's look at the styles. The styles are Kirin and Asahi, simply pale lager. No surprise, of course, pale lager is the most popular style in Japan. The most popular beer is Asahi Super Dry, at least I think it still is, which is the pale lager par excellence. And these are beers with often have adjuncts in them, such as rice or cornstarch. Sapporo produced 17 new beers in 6 styles, and pale lager again was the most common, but they had a variety of other styles as well, Helles and Pilsner and so forth. Suntory 13 beers, 6 different styles, and they did something new this year. They put out pale ales, but these were in the cheap third category beer form, and these are beers that use low malt or no malt in their production, but putting in ale yeast to make a pale ale, pale lagers, and then a few other varieties as well. Okay, what were the most common styles? Well, no surprise, pale lager was at the top, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. That is the most popular style in Japan. Pale ale, 4, and these again were all from Suntory, using ale yeast in a cheap beer format. Pilsner, blonde ale, 3 each, and amber lager and Vienna, both from Suntory, and then 7 other styles. So over the years, since 2017, we also see a decline in the number of the variety of styles made. In say 2015 or so, I think majors were paying attention to the craft beer breweries and trying a variety of different styles. And I think that is kind of ending now. So 9 different styles, that's all. All right. What about sales? Well, it's kind of a given that sales declined each year, and that happened last year as well. 16 straight years that beer sales have declined. The market contracted, of course, in 2020. Why? Well, here's one. The general sales tax increased in Japan in 2019 from 8% to 10%, and that is the general sales tax. You go to a supermarket, buy food, 10% tax. So people are not spending as much money. They're more careful with their money. Of course, we had the coronavirus. People can't go out to bars and restaurants, which is a big source of income for breweries. Here's something else that happened is that low malt or no malt beers took over first place in sales. Again, this is an economic factor, I think, financial factor. These beers are very cheap, generally half the price of a regular beer. So quite popular. If you go to a liquor store in Japan, you'll see stacks of cases of these, and people are just carrying them out. So prices for these third category beers are lower, and they're more often drunk at home. You don't find these cheap, low malt, no malt beers so much in restaurants, and this affects the breweries quite a bit. And you see the figure down below. Asahi Super Dry, 50% of their sales are in beer bars or in restaurants. So that really affected Asahi's bottom line. So let's move along to sales volume. All 4 breweries saw a decrease. Kirin, Sapporo, and Suntory. The sales declined. Asahi doesn't disclose the volume of sales, but they did disclose their value of sales, and then decreased as well in net worth. Okay, so sales declines. The breweries do, the companies that operate the breweries do more than just beer. They do other drinks, some do cosmetics and health supplements and a variety of other things, but we're looking at the beer. Now, here's another problem which might be resolved for brewers in Japan, and this is the beer tax. And Japan has a situation in which the tax is assessed based on fermentable malt content, not on the finished alcohol content. And there are 4 tax categories, and it depends on the amount of fermentables that go into the beer during production. And the higher the the amount of fermentables, the percentage of fermentables, the higher the tax. So this has been a problem for brewers, especially craft brewers that generally use a lot more fermentables than the major brewers. But tax is going to be unified, and the advantage of these lower malt products, as you see, like less than 25% or 20 to 50%, will be removed in 2016 or 2026. And what happened in last year in October was the tax was lowered for beer and sake, but raised for these third category low malt, no malt beers, and also fruit-based alcohol, which includes wine. And so the breweries got a bit of a break for their regular beer, but not for their third category beer. So the price of low malt, no malt beers is rising. Okay, and here is how it's going to work for beer type beverages. Is you can see the situation in October 2020. The next change will come 3 years from that date, and the tax will decrease for them and will increase for low malt beers. Happoshu, which is I think generally in the 67% or so category, which has grain spirits in it, is going to stay flat. The next big change will come 3 years after that, and tax will be unified for all of the beer type beverages. So it will be the same. So the third cheap beer category will not have the tax advantages it currently does have. Okay, each brewery. Let's take a look. Asahi. Asahi unfortunately depends more on restaurants and bars, and they've been hit hard by the coronavirus slowdown in sales. Restaurants, some of them closed for a while, and generally people aren't going out as much. But they do forecast some growth in 2021. They've introduced a home beer dispenser for home consumption. So, and like some other breweries, they have focused on overseas acquisitions. They made a big purchase of several breweries in Eastern Europe a few years ago, and also bought Fuller's in the UK. And Asahi has kind of no real craft beer presence. They occasionally put out something, but it's very, very rare. Kirin. Kirin, after trailing Asahi for so many years, became the #1 beer seller in Japan in 2020. They depend on restaurants and bars for less of their sales, only 20%. One thing that Kirin does is they have rolled out, and this has been going on for a while, a system called Tap Marché. And you see a picture of it over on the side, the 4 taps. And what this is a dispenser for craft beer, which they will put into bars or restaurants and supply them with smaller amounts of beer, smaller kegs. I think it's 3 liters, something like that. So you can bring a craft beer presence into any bar or restaurant if you agree with the Kirin terms. And a number of craft brewers in Japan have signed up for this, including Issei Kadoya, Hideji, Baird Beer. So you find their beers wherever there's a Tap Marché. And there are so many locations, 13,000 in 2019, probably more now. So craft beer bars and restaurants, kind of few and far between. But but many bars and restaurants will have a Tap Marché. So it's kind of a killer app for the big brewer here to take on craft beer. And of course, they're also selling their own. They have Spring Valley Brewery, which is available in these tap mache forms as well. And they're developing a new one called Tappy for small restaurants. You see a picture of it down at the bottom corner there. And they're introducing their own home dispenser with a subscription plan. So you get the home dispenser and you will get a monthly supply of, you can choose different varieties of beers and amounts of beer and so forth for a monthly delivery. Kirin's main craft beer line is Grand Kirin. They also have Spring Valley, two breweries, one in Kyoto, one or two tap rooms at least, one in Kyoto, one in Tokyo. So they've had more of a focus on craft beer than other breweries have. Okay, and so Kirin doesn't seem to be doing quite as badly. Let's look at Sapporo now, and they have a big overseas focus. And in fact, they are the most popular Japanese beer. Their premium, Sapporo Premium, is the #1 Japanese beer in the US, and it has been for 50 years. So they are planning to build a new brewery in the US. They currently have production facilities in Canada, and I think they're contract brewed on the East Coast as well. They want their own brewery in the United States. They're predicting a sales volume increase as well. And some of you may know this, that they have also bought the craft brewer Anchor in the United States in San Francisco. And Anchor beer is now available here in Japan easily. Suntory. Suntory depends a lot on the United States for its international sales, but Suntory is much more of a focus on whiskey, and this has been happening over the last several years. Japanese whiskeys won prizes at international competitions, and Whiskey World took notice, and now certain bottles of Japanese whiskey command very high prices. At auctions, you can get some of these things maybe for a similar price or lower price. So here we see an example of a Yamazaki single malt 25-year-old at 8,000 online. And on the other hand, Suntory makes a variety of very low-priced whiskey, and here we have a 1.8-liter bottle for only $12. Actually. So Suntory had a drop in income, but they forecast a small increase in 2021. Their craft beer line is called Tokyo Craft. It's not very active. They occasionally put something out there, but not very often. Okay, so now I'm going to finish up with some trends. And the first one is a kind of big trend, I think, and that is low or no alcohol beer. And in Japan, it's still kind of limited, 5% of all sales, and you can compare that to Australia and Germany. But the brewers are focusing more on this now. There's increased focus on health, and young people aren't drinking alcohol as much. So Asahi is forecasting that category will really jump next year, and they are adding more products. They're going to have a new Brewery label, which is a 0.5% alcohol beer, and that will come out at the end of March 2021. Kirin is expecting the sales of these kinds of beers to rise next year, and they have a beer called Greens Free, and it's just gone through a relaunch, and it's quite visible in liquor stores now. Suntory has its All Free line, and that is has several different varieties. And Sapporo has their premium alcohol-free and the newer one called Umami. So all of them are putting out more low or non-alcohol beers. And one of the reasons why I think many people don't like no-alcohol beers is the flavor. It just doesn't taste the same. But there are some improvements in the works. And the one that interests me, and I'm not sure how this works exactly, is the slower alcohol removal process, which they say is gentler on the beer. It doesn't reduce the flavors so much. Okay, And we're going to finish now with a look at more trends. And crafty beers, which are, of course, the craft beers put out by a large company, haven't been terribly successful. It seems like the breweries have flailed around trying this, trying that over the last several years, and so a new line will come out and then disappear, and then something else will come out and disappear. Except Kirin's Spring Valley has been fairly successful overall, and they've just released one of their varieties in canned 6-packs, and that's appearing in liquor stores now throughout Japan. Online sales, of course, during the coronavirus time have really increased, and so a lot of breweries are doing this, craft beer breweries certainly. Otomoni, which is an online site, is big, and craft beer subscriptions where you can order and get a regular delivery. This is, of course, not for uh, the major beers as much as it is for craft beers. Other drinks are big, increasing, and one of them is craft gin. Apparently, Japanese craft gin is getting quite big in the United States. Here's a picture of one of the early ones in Kyoto called Ki no Obi. Home dispensers, which we looked at with these programs to allow you to get a regular delivery, monthly delivery of beer. Third category beers, still quite popular. Again, third category means beers that include very little malt or no malt. Very popular now, but we should see that decline gradually as tax rates become the same as with all malt beers. And finally, a further focus on overseas markets. I think we'll expect to see more breweries, more of the majors looking overseas for their profits. Japanese aren't drinking as much. They're more health conscious. Population is aging, and older people, of course, don't drink as much or cannot drink as much. So, well, we'll see what happens. I have done this every year on my blog, which I've kind of let go every year, taking a look at the major beers, and I'll probably do the same in 2022. So if you have any questions, please do ask me. If you have any comments, please do tell me. Let me know what you think. A lot of craft beer drinkers do not drink major beers. I do. I try everything that comes out because I want to see what it is. For example, this Kirin beer you see up here, which is apparently the first completely no carb, no sugar beer made. I tried it out. It's terrible, but I always want to see what's going on. Okay, so let me know what you think and subscribe to the channel. Yeah, and we'll be reviewing lots more new beers soon. Okay, and that is it for today. And I hope you're doing well. Take care. Bye-bye.